Welcome to Transform the Money, Transform the World with Brian DeMint. And I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of start over to pick up where we left off last time. I asked you, Brian, what eHarmony is, and what did you ask me back?
I never used it, so I'm going to trust in your explanation of it, but I thought this was brilliant.
Okay. Brian replied to me, well, it's a dating service. I said, who says it's a dating service? Okay. The gentleman that started eHarmony, he designed it at the right time, right place. You know, we have eHarmony. We have a lot of things because we have something called Web 2 and email. Okay. Let's start talking about the basics of it being the email. And when we could connect from peer to peer, we're talking about the way we do commerce, but basically all these dating sites, you become, I hate to reference it that way, but the world's biggest singles are at your fingertips, and where people. So when I explain Bitcoin to people, I start out, as I've said, with like electricity. Hey, that was hard to understand for about 40 years. And as the infrastructure was built out, and much like the Bitcoin infrastructure is being built out, there's just a lot of comparisons there. And electricity changed commerce. But eHarmony specifically, if 5 people would have joined eHarmony and 4 people would have got married, one person paid their fee, and there were no more mates left, then essentially what you got is a Ponzi scheme. However, enough people adopted it, it created a very strong grid. Put you on the spot. How many adopters, it's a hard number to find, but how many adopters do you think there are of Bitcoin today globally?
It's difficult to tell because the amount of wallets don't always correlate to individual users. So Chad could be one unique user, but have 3 different wallets, which is fairly common. But there's hundreds of millions of wallets in the world right now. And so, if you want to take a conservative estimate of that, I would say that there's probably 10 million people around the world that have adopted Bitcoin. What the exchanges say about users might put that at a higher number, but you don't know if that's adopting crypto more broadly or specifically Bitcoin. But yeah, I would say that probably worldwide, which 10 million people is a lot of people. But when you talk about a revolutionary technology, we're still in the early innings. And I think that number is set to explode. So if you want to talk about, Bitcoin at whatever price it is today, X, Y, or Z, and I think we're somewhere in the range of $70,000 per Bitcoin today. I'm not a financial advisor here, but it is pretty wild to think that because there's so few Bitcoin, that only 10 million people out of 8 billion people can make the price go to 70,000. It's pretty exciting to think what happens when 100 million people adopt Bitcoin, when 1 billion people adopt Bitcoin. You're talking about some world-changing network effects, and that's kind of what you're talking about with eHarmony here, is that the network effect, the value of a network like Bitcoin is exponential to the amount of users it has. And so that number is growing rapidly.
I think I read one time where eHarmony had 700,000 users. Okay. But, and by the way, we're going to have to reach out to them and sponsor the show as much as we've talked about them here, but 700,000 adopters. So the difference, decentralized consensus-based asset ledger, Bitcoin, that sounds deep. Let's just break it down. Decentralized meaning there's no central source. There's no brick and mortar. There's no CEO. Open to the entire world for commerce. Okay. Now, I'll call it eHarmony Web 2. It's got an on-off button, and then entrance and an exit that can be shut down and controlled and censored. So there's the one difference. But the matching debits and credits. Okay, when you own Bitcoin, it's the perfect CPA, perfect notary public, perfect timestamp. Maybe on another show you can talk about how important a timestamp is in technology. That's not my expertise, but decentralized consensus-based asset ledger. And one of these times we'll have to get kind of deep into, Satoshi Nakamoto, the alias, and how we got here. And it's, it was essentially the time that he was obviously frustrated and would be still today out of our government capitalizing the gains and socializing the losses. And I'm sure you've heard that. But in closing here, do you have any other analogies that you use in an elevator pitch for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some really simple ones, and I'll keep this one really brief. What was the fundamental thing you talked about? There's a few things that make Bitcoin really important. The fact that it's the first time we are able to decentralize consensus without, that decentralizing means without a middle person. I would say the other thing is that we were able to make digital things scarce. In computer science history, 2009 marks a really important date that before 2009, everything that was digital could be copy and pasted endlessly. You could not cap something that was digital. Songs could be downloaded infinitely. Whatever you had, if it was digital, it was going to lose all of its value because people could just copy it or download it or whatever. But with Bitcoin, it marked the first time in computer science history that we could make digital things scarce. Think about that for 5 minutes, and you'll see that this is a really, really big idea that we're talking about.
Well, I think we have about a minute and a half left, so let's just talk about this scarcity a minute. 21 million Bitcoin transactions, 19.5 million have been mined, okay, but approximately 140 years to mine the additional 1.5 million because of the halving. But you get into some of these other numbers that blows me away. About 5 million have been lost with today's technology, can't be recovered. And that means there's 14 million of these transactions floating around, and only 1.8 million are held on exchanges. Okay. Where are those other approximately 12 million in your opinion? The majority of ownership has them on cold storage wallets.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So cold storage, if you hold Bitcoin, I would say that not everybody, if you're buying into an ETF or something like that, then, that's through a regulated, financial instrument. But if you hold Bitcoin yourself, where you want to keep it is in self-sovereignty. That means cold storage. It means you hold the password and the keys so that the only person that has access to that is you or potentially your family. That is another one of the revolutionary aspects of Bitcoin. I can't hold my Apple stock myself. I have to hold it through an exchange, but I can hold my Bitcoin myself, just like I would hold my gold or my silver or my cash. I can have absolute custody over my Bitcoin.
Thank you, Brian. We're going to dive more into that in the next episode. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.